If we really want to know about permaculture, what we should do is go talk to the experts about it. Here are a few of the experts who gained my respect in a journey not long ago above the rest. See, this is why I have so many fans, because I come up with good ideas like this.
Principles going into each of these aspects of our lives. So when we consider the whole flower, we're looking at the holistic perception of permaculture and thinking, how can we design these aspects of our societies so that they're in alignment with nature and they're following the three ethics: earth, care, people care, fair share, and the principles. In this case, we look at 12. The first principle of permaculture is observe and interact. Because if we dive into something and we don't observe first, then we're making a lot of assumptions and we're not learning, and then there's problems. So that's a good example. A good example of that these days is agriculture, and how we just kind of decided how it works, and then now we're fighting nature all the time. Instead of to be able to see, okay, this is how nature works, so let's improve upon that so that we can benefit not only us, but the whole web of life. Food forests is a good part of that too. Solar, like passive solar heating, is another example of observation. When the sun comes like this, if we can catch it like there, we can heat the house. Which goes into the second principle. The second principle is catch and store energy. Catch and store energy. Now that can be solar energy, that can be water, that can be, one of the things that we saw in our farm is a lot of tourists coming through and volunteers, and we wanted to catch and store the energy that they offer and have them experience empowering skills and inspiration. So that's an example of a social aspect of catching and storing energy.
And in farming, the only way to really do organic farming is developing a different consciousness. So actually, when we're developing that consciousness and our kids are growing into these farms, we're really building up or building back human consciousness that can be transferred into the food, that can be going, it is very, very different. What happens with a kid that is grown into an organic farm, the kid that is grown in a conventional farm. It's very sad to see kids growing in conventional farms. So, the personal relationships, that's what I'm talking about, is developing personal relationships within ourselves, with our animals, with our plants, with soil. And that relationship really has to be seen in a deep meaning of this concept. It's not just, for example, an integrated farm is important not just because the manure will be transformed into compost and then the compost will be taken to the soils. The important part of this is the anemic relationship that an animal can express on a farm. And then how this can be fixed into a different structural molecule on the manure that is going to be transferred to the soil, that is going to be transferred to the plant, and that is going to be eaten by a human, and then it will go into the cycle again. So it's not the material thing, it's the energy that we can really make go into a circle.
The third principle we look at is called obtain and yield. So when we watch nature and we see how it works, we can then take, for an example, the food forest. We look at the levels of a food forest, and we see that in nature there's certain trees that we may not use in our day-to-day lives. And so when we want to recreate the food forest, we put the properties of each, we look at the properties of each element. So for example, looking at a forest, there's canopy, there's subcanopy, there's shrubs, ground cover, roots, vines, and emergence. And emergence being palms that come up over the canopy. So when we're looking at something like that, we can then put in, I want to have a coconut as an emergent. I want to have guapinol as a canopy tree or mango or something like this. Underneath that, maybe I want something smaller, maybe corral. And then I could have, some a shrub, more like we could use a cherry, for example, the acerola cherries as a shrub. And then on top, below that, we could have camote as ground cover, or Brazilian spinach, or we could have, and then we have roots, arakachi or yucca, and then vines, maybe passion fruit. And so we utilize the same pattern that nature makes. We put things that we want to eat in there, so that we have condensed food sources for our farm, or for our homes, or for our communities. So that's an example of an earth care system, right? Well, it's also people care because we're feeding people. On a social level, that could also be considered something like obtaining a yield would be, so there's tourists that come to the farm, they want to see how life is like, they want to experience Costa Rican culture, so they then would have an experience of going into the community, and then they come to the farm, maybe they work sometime. So they're bringing in a couple yields in this case. One is that they're bringing in money, which will then support the community around us, not just us. The second would be that they're offering their work, and so the yield of that would be projects, like fruition of projects that are going on. As well, another yield that they're obtaining is the experience and the skill set of this, and so they're feeling like they're also obtaining a yield. So that's an example of a social, utilizing this in a social way.